To BBC News at 6. Thousands of students have clashed with police at Westminster today during a mass demonstration against plans to increase university tuition fees in England. Some protesters converged on the building where the Conservative Party has its main offices, setting fire to placards and some of them smashing windows. Student leaders have condemned the violence. Our correspondent Tom Simons was there and he's just sent us this report.
The doorstep of the Conservative Party's headquarters. Just 1 week after the government announced its plans for the future of universities. The Millbank building was on the route of today's march and it was besieged. At the front, a small, seemingly uncoordinated group of protesters was intent on fighting the police. But behind them, a crowd of thousands was refusing to move.
This standoff's been going on for some time now. It looks as though there are people way inside the Millbank building behind me on different floors. Fire extinguishers are being fired from higher levels and items dropped on the police below.
It wasn't long before they were on the roof, inside the lobby, smashing down doors and hunting for other entrances.
Some of the windows got taken down, so people went in to try and kind of take the space, really kind of make our point that, you know, we're not going to put up with our universities, our education, our general society being treated like this.
The lunchtime march itself had been peaceful. When it turned violent, this was the response of the student union president.
50,000 students have come to protest peacefully, and they've made a serious point. But they are in jeopardy of being completely undermined by the outrageous and violent actions of a small minority.
Most of those watching what was going on here today did not condone it, but did regard it as an understandable reaction to the government's proposals.
I think the point has been got across that a lot of people are very angry about this.
The violence has gone a bit too far, but I think it's quite exciting to know that so many students are willing to stand up and make their voices heard.
It feels like the days of kind of Thatcher are back now. You've got the budget cuts and now you've got the riots.
But this was not expected to be a violent protest. Scotland Yard said relatively small numbers of officers were on hand, around 225.
We did, as we always do, plan for this event in order to police it proportionately with the indications from the organisers and from all the other information available to us. And we were planning today for a peaceful demonstration, and we remain very disappointed that some people have chosen not to protest peacefully.
Tonight, 10 people have been injured, 3 of them police officers. But the police are regaining control of the area. Tom Simons, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, today's demonstration with some of the placards accusing Nick Clegg of betrayal brings into sharp focus the tensions right at the heart of the coalition. Lib Dem MPs who promised to oppose any rise in tuition fees are now being threatened with a possible electoral challenge from the National Union of Students. But Mr Clegg, Lib Dem leader of course and Deputy Prime Minister, told MPs today that the plans offered a fair deal for students. Our political correspondent Rita Chakrabarti has this report.
Tuition fees were always going to be a toxic subject for the Lib Dems. Raising them is a joint coalition decision. But for Nick Clegg, it means turning his previous policy on its head. Today in the Commons, Labour sensed his weakness. Their own policy is still in development. But that didn't stop them firing no fewer than 12 questions at the Lib Dem leader.
He's pulling the plug on public funding and dumping the cost onto students. Isn't that why he's betraying his promise on tuition fees?
She agrees, we all agree across all sides of this House, that graduates should make some contribution for the benefit of going to university. The question is how? We have a progressive plan. She has no plan whatsoever.
For many on this march, it's the Lib Dems they've got in their sights. Their protests driven by a strong sense of betrayal at the party that said it would scrap tuition fees, not nearly treble them. Fees are now around £3,000, but will go up to £6,000. And universities will be able to charge up to £9,000 in exceptional circumstances. Their funding is being cut by 40%, with teaching grants all but wiped out, except for science and maths. During the election, Lib Dems promised not to raise fees, including their leader.
To raise the cap on tuition fees is wrong. We will resist, vote against, campaign against any lifting of that cap.
One Lib Dem who will vote against a rise says the protest will remind his colleagues of how controversial this is.
Many of us also will have seen the protests on the streets and be reminded that this is an issue that matters not just to young people, not just to today's students, but to lots of people across the country who see the future of our education system as being terribly important.
Thousands of miles from Westminster on his tour of China, David Cameron found himself being grilled on the issue by a student there.
The UK is one of the favorite destinations for overseas study for Chinese students. But recently, the tuition fee is raised, which may probably prevent some excellent students.
Last night, protesters held a vigil outside Nick Clegg's house. Tonight, the National Union of Students says it'll try to force by-elections in constituencies where Lib Dems break their promises. Rita Chakrabarti, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, Laura Koonsberg is at the scene of today's protest for us. We can join her now. Laura, lots of questions to ask, obviously about the degree of the violence, but also to what extent the police were properly prepared for this demonstration today.
Well, I think clearly this demonstration today took the police by surprise, and politicians too. The extent and scale was not what they had been expecting. And in the last few minutes, the Commissioner of the Met, Sir Paul Stevenson, has said that the police should have been more prepared for the level of violence. And what happened here today was unacceptable and an embarrassment. Now, no surprise, perhaps there are still some protesters here. I just want to explain to you exactly what is happening right now. Over my shoulder in the reception area of 30 Millbank, the ringleaders and the protesters who were on the roof of the building are being detained by police as they try to move on those people who are still here at the demonstration. But even as the debris of this protest begins to be swept away, the police do their best to calm this situation down and to end it. There is a political problem for the Liberal Democrats that will not be easily brushed away. Tonight, sources close to Nick Clegg say there is no wriggle room. It would be a mistake for them to change their course of action. But clearly, for the Lib Dems and the coalition, the resistance to the change of tuition fees is going to be an ongoing problem.
Indeed, Laura, thank you very much. Laura Koonsberg there for us on Millbank in central London.